Welcome to this video on the recent developments between Dana White and really overall in boxing. Dana White has said that he wants to get involved and is looking to get involved in boxing, looking at building a space for boxing in his companies, really, and building, things like a boxing area at, where the UFC Apex is, I believe, in Las Vegas. And really, there's also been talk about Francis Ngannou from Dana White. And so really just getting straight into it, I'll go through the shorter topic first, which is Dana White talking about Francis Ngannou and saying that basically he was offered a lot more money or significantly more money to fight in the UFC than he has earned from boxing. Thought I'd just want to dive into this topic really, because overall, that it's come out, it's become news. People are like, oh yeah, well, after he lost to Anthony Joshua, if he still was going to earn more in the UFC, why did he leave? He's made a bad choice. So I really want to go through that and really dive in fully. And look, we don't know if that is actually the figures are true. What figures were offered by the UFC. And what he actually fully earned from the Tyson Fury and the AJ fights. But overall, let's take the comment from Dana White that it's true. He would have earned more money in the UFC currently than he would have done from the boxing. One point here is really, just so people are aware, the boxing contract, the PFL and all this contract, I do believe he's got a lot more freedom. And that's one thing that won't be monetary, but will provide him a lot more opportunities to make a lot more money in a small amount of fights. I think also, comparing two boxing fights, how many UFC fights would he had on his contract, the amount of restrictions in his contracts to make sure he actually fights, say if he's got 4 fights on his contract, he has to fight them 4 to negotiate a new pay and things, whereas all this will be paid fight by fight. He can negotiate how he wants, and if you don't want to do it, you don't have to go to the table. To be honest with you, that is very, very much the freedom he has currently with the boxing. I think it's hard to compare. I do think actually the move to boxing, yes, if he won against AJ, I don't think there'd be any talk of this, but because he lost against AJ, there's talk of he would have earned more. Now, I think there's many fights he can take. He could take a Wilder fight. Wilder's looking for a fight of a big name that'll pay him again. You got Joe Joyce. You got many people slightly below that top echelon of boxing, which is your Fury, your Usyk, your Dubois, waiting for them title fights that will fight you because you are the big money fight. You are bigger money than someone who's the next fight, and like Wilder, I think Wilder is a big fight that he could take. To be honest, that would be an incredible fight. I think easy to sell. Two fighters who've got an amazing punch power and knockout power. A great fight to sell. Easy for the Saudis who will likely put it on to sell it. I think that could be a really big fight for them to put on next. And I do think when we look back in a few years, you'll actually find that you don't know who Ngannou would be fighting in the UFC, how much he would be paid, how much restriction he had. I do think the boxing move made sense for him at the time, and also he's made enough money where it wasn't a stupid decision. To be honest with you, I don't think it's that far out. And actually, if he has a few more fights that are high profile against, say, a Wilder and stuff, he'll make the same much, if not more. And he's only done it in 3 fights. The UFC likely be more fights, more restrictive. He'd have to take certain fights when he didn't want to. It gave him the freedom he needed. So I think really, okay, that thing's come out by Dana White, but overall, Ngannou's made his decision. I don't think it's two sides of a coin that haven't come out much different to each other. I think there was big talk, him going to boxing, he's going to earn massively more money. I don't think that's true either, to be honest with you, unless he gets massive fights like a Wilder, then secondly he gets another fight, and then it's another fight. If he gets 5 fights, they're all the massive names. He's had 2 massive names, but if he gets 5, yeah, fair enough, he might have earned more, but I don't think that's going to happen, to be honest. I think it could be next one and it's done, or maybe another. Just because we've seen the level now, he's not at that world level. His name's too big to go any lower. There's limited amount of fights he's got to be able to do, and that makes sense to people. Getting on to another topic, Dana White, and it really feels straight in. Dana White looking to get into boxing, so I believe this is going to, in a sense, this is confirmed this is happening. But I want to talk about how this is going to affect the boxing world we currently are in if Dana White gets involved. I think he becomes a promoter. Like a promoter type. He'll be in front of it, like in Eddie Hearn. He'll be a face, but in a sense, he'll own his side of it, like a UFC. I think the contracts will be difficult for him to get around. I think there will be no sort of UFC ability to go, look, I'm holding you to these contracts. We are the mainstay of this sport. They won't be. There'll be a newcomer. It'll be very different. Even to Power Slap, where, look, they were the one who legitimised it and made it a thing, to be honest, on a world stage. And that's the difference, is that boxing's already there, already working. If Dana White's in or out, it doesn't really affect the sport. In a sense of it, it will still run. Whereas take Dana White out of Power Slap, take Dana White out of MMA, I think you diminish it significantly. Especially Power Slap. I mean, that becomes a nothing again. That no one in the whole world, really, overall world knowledge, it diminishes a lot. I think Dana White's going to find it hard to get contracts in. I don't know how far this is going to go into a UFC model. I don't think it will do. I think it will be Dana White with Turki Al-Sheikh working together, like Turki Al-Sheikh is working with Eddie Hearn, with Frank Warren. I think it'll be that type of thing, but I think they will try and sign fighters. They're going to have to pay well. That's the thing. They're going to have to pay sometimes over the odds to get some of these fighters in and start building it up. They know that, but then you start building the names, get names in your roster to attract really the younger people who are coming in, 17, 18, signing those guys for the future of your business, really. Getting in there, getting a few big names, but signing the young roster so that in 10 years you have a roster that competes with the Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn. I do think this will all be encompassed with Turki Al-Sheikh and Riyadh season, just purely because that's where Dana White, I think, has come from. Why he got into it now, I think it's more that they will look at signing people, but Turki Al-Sheikh has the money and monopoly on the game currently. He can ask, look, there's so much money in there that he can bring anyone to the table. How long that lasts for, where Turki Al-Sheikh is actually bringing people to the table rather than just going, I want the table is, I don't need to bring anyone to the table. This is my table. Your new fighters are mine. When he starts, I do think there's a point in the future where that could happen if he continues wanting to make boxing a huge sport. I think he needs to go. He doesn't need to, but he can go, really. Your fighter's coming out of contract, I'm going to sign him. Does he want that level of responsibility and integration with it? Maybe not, and I don't think he does. I think he wants to be over it, going, I want this fight, make it happen, guys. And Frank, Eddie, Dana, or whoever else, will make it work. I do think Dana's coming in. I think he's in a tough position. I think getting big names to get signed and to make it work, it's going to be a lot of expenditure out. But one thing that will likely have pushed him to do so is that he knows he can make a massive amount of money with Turki Al-Sheikh going, I want certain fights. So if he can start trying to sign fighters at the end of their contracts, anything can happen, but getting them names and going, look, trust me, I know what I'm doing, when, you know, Eddie, Frank have been in the game for so long, it's very tough for them guys to actually do something, really. I think some promoters, you know, and I'm talking Eddie and Frank, but there's many promoters. I think some promoters are likely to chop and change, go away, you know, disappear from the world stage. And I think Dana will likely offer funding to take contracts off these guys. If he wants to get into it, that's what he wants to do, is take, you know, you got a couple of big names, I want to take their contracts and I'll pay you a amount of money because you can't continue operating. So that's a big thing Dana White I think will happen. I think he'll start buying up promoters who are in sort of financial troubles, or, you know, haven't got the capital or the value anymore to continue running at the size they are, or and he'll start having to get that sort of young level of roster built. I think that's the most important thing, is that you can spend a huge amount of money over the odds to sign fighters, but there will be a point in the future where you need to start having a roster of your own, where it has to start making money. At the start you can lose. 10 years down the line you cannot be losing money on signing fighters for double the amount anyone else would pay for them. So it's very important he starts getting a young roster built. How do they scout? How do they build a roster for themselves? Who do they sign? Like they did with the UFC, they've all got sort of very good knowledge of fighters and how they build up rosters and how they get people in. But boxing is a very different sport. They haven't got a monopoly on the top end of that game. They haven't got every fighter saying, I want to be signed with Dana White or the UFC like they have in MMA. So it's very tough for them to operate. I think it'll be a good few years. I think he'll work very closely with Turki Al-Sheikh for the first few years, having maybe only a few fighters at that top level. And that will be a few years down the line from now. And then, you know, look, 10 years down the line, we'll really see if the Dana White boxing project has really worked, because that's when you start seeing who is he signed at the young level to go, you're going to be a world champion. And that's what the Frank does, that's what the Eddie Hearn does. They've already set up, they're already ready to go. So look, that's what he needs to get done. It'll be a few years before he starts setting up that roster, but 10 years at least after that will be the time when we see if that is really, he's made an impact into boxing. And then you've got a load of other stuff with Turki Al-Sheikh could take it over with the amount of money he's got. He could just go, I want to own it all. So you've got a lot of variables in there, but I think it can only help boxing to have more competitors in there, more promoters, more money going around trying to fight for these fighters. It only helps the fighters at the end of the day, and that's why the fighters, you know, in a sense, aren't helped in the MMA scene when you have got one company as the major sports holder of that sport, you know, that style of sport. So please let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.